Welcome to another live video on this channel. Before get started, let me check whether this live is working or not on my phone. Let me check it first. All right, take Barik. Let me check it whether this live is working or not. All right, I think this live is working fine. Working just fine. Okay. In this live video, we're going to solve a popular coding interview question: set matrix zeros. This is the problem. Given an m by n integer matrix, if an element is 0, set its entire row and column to 0. The constraint to this problem is that we have to solve this problem in constant space complexity. We cannot recreate our matrix, the given matrix. We have to solve the problem in place. So it will take constant space complexity. Here we have some examples, and here we have some follow-up question. First, let's see the examples here. In these examples, we saw that we have 0 right here. So we have to set this entire column and this entire row to 0, and this is what it is, right? For this matrix, we have 0 here and here. So we have to set this entire column and this entire row to 0, and here this entire column to 0 and this entire row to 0. So we'll get this matrix. This is the problem. Here we have some follow-up question. A straightforward solution using O of m in space is probably a bad idea. We can just recreate our matrix. We can copy our matrix to another matrix. Then we can just check the original matrix, and if we find out a value 0, we will set the entire one column to 0. But this is the worst. This is the naive solutions. Then we can improve the solutions using set data structure. We can use set data structure. What we will do in that approach? What we will do? We will create two set data structure. Once for row and once for column. Then what we will check is column and row. So here, if we iterate this entire matrix, if we have a value 0, then we will add the index of row and index of column to our row and set matrix, to our row and column set, or hash set, you could say. But that's not the efficient solution. That's not the best solution. Here the question is that could we devise a constant space solution? Yes, we can. In this video, we're going to mainly talk about the constant space solution. If you guys have any questions, or if you have any suggestions for this problem, you could comment in the chat section. Just ask your question here if you have any question. Do you have any question? If you have any question, ask your question in the chat forum. Okay, so you can ask your question here. Now I'm going to start solving this problem. Do you need the brute force solutions of this problem? Of this problem set matrix zeros? Do you want that I should show first the brute force solutions that takes off in space complexity? Should I do that? If you want that, then just comment in the you can comment in the reply sections. Then I will start. Or if you want the video for this space of m times m plus n space complexity, then you can comment. Then I will show you that how to do that. But if you don't, if I saw no comment, I will start solving this problem with the most optimum solutions that takes constant space. I see there is no reply to our reply section. So I'm gonna start the questions, and I'm gonna start solving it in the best possible way. All right, so let's get started. First thing, first thing what I would like to do here is that I need to construct a matrix. Let's use here a matrix 0 1 2 0, then 3 1 2 1 1 3 5 1 3 0 2 7. In this problem we are given this matrix. If we find out any value is 0 in that matrix, we will set the entire row and the entire column to zeros. We can solve this problem in O of m times n space complexity, where m is the height, n is the width. We can solve this problem in this space complexity easily, but this is not the efficient solution. We can optimize our algorithms further using hash set data structure that will take O of m times n space complexity. We can solve this problem using hash set data structure pretty easily using m plus n space complexity. Now I'm going to show you I'm going to show you the most optimum solution. So let's see how to solve this problem efficiently. First thing, what we will do, we will check if we have 0 in our first row and in our first column. We'll create two variables. Row has 0. Row has 0. If row has 0, we'll set this variable to true, and we will have another variable col has 0. If column has 0, we will set this variable to true. In this for this given matrix, we see that we have 0 in the row, so we will set the row has 0 to true. Then here for first column, we see in our first column we have 0, so we will set col has 0 to true. Okay, now what we're going to do, we're going to iterate the array from index from row index 1 and column index 1, from here all the way to this element. So we'll iterate this portion of this matrix. We'll iterate this submatrix. Okay, we'll just iterate this submatrix, and we will use a tricks to mark the index. So first let's write out the index number here, 0 1 2 3, 0 1 2 3. This is a relatively difficult problem for beginners, I think, but just bear with me. First we will have two variables. Row has 0, we will have true if we have 0 in our first row. We will have a variable call has 0. If we have 0 in our first column, we will have the value true here, otherwise we will have false. Now we're gonna iterate this submatrix from index row index 1 and column index 1 all the way to the this element, the bottom right element. Okay, now if we find out an element is 0, we'll just move one by one. First we have 1, then we have 2, then we have 1, then we have 3, then we have 5, then we have 1, then we have 0. If we find out 0, what we will do, if we find out 0, then we will multiply the index at, okay, so if we have a element 0, then we will multiply the first element in the column and first element in the row. So what is the first element in this column? There is 1. What is the first element in this row? That is 3. Okay, so I hope you understand what I mean by this. Okay, so here we saw that we have here 3, we have here 1. If we have here a value 0, what we will do, we will mark the first element in this row and the first element in this column. How we can mark? We don't know the value, or whatever value we will have for this matrix. We might have negative value, we might have positive value, we don't know. So what I can do, we will just multiply the first element with 0 in the column and the first element in the row with 0. So we have 0. Okay. Then we have 2, 7. We're kind of done. We have marked the index set in our first column, in our first element in the first row where we have 0, and in the first element in the column. So we're done. So we can say this is our pre-processing phrase. We just pre-processed. Now what we're going to do, we're going to iterate. We'll skip our first element, whatever element we have here. We don't care. We'll skip the first element. We'll iterate the first row from index 1 all the way to the end. Just the first row. Then we'll iterate the first column from index 1 to 3. The first column. This is your first column. If we find out a value in our row is 0, then we will set the entire row, entire column. If we have here, we'll start from here. Okay. If we have here, we have here 0, so we'll set this entire column to 0, and here we have 0, so we'll set this entire column to 0, and we will iterate this column. If we have any value 0, we will set the entire row to 0. Here we have 0, so we'll set this entire row to 0. So what we will have, we can just set the value to 0, and here this arrow as well. So 0, 0, and 0. Let's set this arrow to 0. So 0. Now we have in our first, we have in this variable row has 0 equals to true. So what we will do, we will set our first row to 0. So let's our first row, sorry, this is not the first row, this first column. We have call has 0 equals to 2. So let's set the first column to 0. So we set the first column to 0. Then here let's set our first row to 0 because we have here true. Now we are done. We have solved this problem. This is how we can solve this problem. The time complexity of this solution, the overall time complexity would be O of m times n time complexity. The overall time complexity, this is the overall the overall time complexity. And what is the space complexity? The space complexity is O of 1, because we're solving this problem in place. We're not using any additional extra space. So this algorithm will take constant space complexity. This is my solution to this problem. Do you have any question? You can ask your question in the Q&A forum or in the replay sections. If you want to see any specific explanations or for any inputs, you can post your input in the Q&A forum. I will talk about that, and I will give you the in-depth explanations for that examples. No problem at all. You can post your question. If you have any question, I'm ready to answer. I saw there is no question in the replay in the live chat forum, so I can go to code now. Live on this channel, so I can give you useful content for you to help you prepare for your next coding interview. All right, I see that there is no replay in the live chat. Now here, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to check our first row. Check first row and first column. Check first row and first column. If we have 0, then we will pre-process. We will pre-process the array. Okay. And then in the third step, we will nullify. We will set the, let's call it nullify. So nullify the row or column to 0. Okay, this is the problem. I hope you are understanding. Now let's move to the coding part. Still, if you have any question for this problem, I am ready to answer. Still there is no question in the live chat. It's okay. Let's move to the coding part. Now let's see the algorithm. All right, now let's set everything to default here. default. Okay, let me go to the full screen so you can see the code clearly, what's going on the screen. Awesome. Now let me change the theme here. Okay, so let's see the code. First, what we will do, we will create, first thing, we will create two variable. Let's call it boolean first has first row. Let's call this variable has first row equals to false initially, and boolean has a first column. Has first column equals in the first, does the first column consist 0 or does the first row consist 0? We have these two variables for that. Now let's check our first row. So int I equals to 0, I less than, we're gonna check our first row. So let's find out the length of our row. So nums 0 dot length I plus plus. Right inside here, we don't need actually this curly braces because we will have just only one line inside. No, we will have multiple line, not just one line here. I have to check if a matrix in our first row, okay, first row, and then here the column index, if it's equals to 0, what we will do, we will set has first row to true, and I don't need to check anymore. If we have if we found one value 0, we don't have to check the rest. Now let's do the same for the first column. So for int I equals to 0, I less than the length of our column, which is this we can say nums dot length I plus plus. Right inside here, we're gonna check in our first column if any value is 0. So matrix I, and this is for column index, if it's equals to 0, what we will do inside, we're gonna set has first call to true, and we don't have to check anymore, just break it. So we have marked our, we check the first row and first column. This is for first row and this is for first column. Now let's pre-process our matrix. We can say pre-process. So let's pre-process our matrix right here. So for that, let's use your to loop. We have to use nested loop. So for int I equals to, we'll start from 1, okay, from row index 1 and column index 1. So we can say here row equals to 1, while row is less than nums dot length. This is for row index, okay, not column index. So we should have here nums dot length, not nums 0 dot length. Nums 0 dot length is for our column. So r plus plus. Right inside here, our nested loop, int column c equals to 1, c less than nums 0 dot length. This is c for column, okay. So here c plus plus. Now inside here, I'm gonna check if our current element is 0. If matrix r and c, if it's equals to 0, if our current element is 0, so we will mark our first element in our first row and the first element in our first column, and then we will just multiply it by 0, okay. So matrix, we can just set that to 0, no problem. We can just set that to 0, or we can just multiply that 0. That's the same thing. So in our first what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna multiply the first element in our the first element in our row. So the row index, and then here we have to use 0 equals to 0. This is for first element in our row. Now first element in our column, first element in our column. So first element in our column, what I have to do is that So first we have to provide the index of our current column. The index of our first we have to select our current column. We have row index. So how we can do that? For examples, if we have this index, we have to select these indices. Okay, so here for this input, we have to select these indices. So for row, we can get the row index 0, and for column index, we have to do first at 0 column and at our current column. This is for column equals to 0. Hope you get the point here. Okay, and this is what we have to do for the pre-processing phrase. We can say this is your pre-processing phrase. Now we have to nullify. So let's set the row to 0 or column to 0. So we have just pre-processed it by just multiplying the first. So at the first space we will have here 0 and here 0. Now we have to check our first column and first row. So we have to do nullify process now. So for int I equals to 1, I less than, we don't have to worry about the first element, the first element at index 0 to 0. So I less than nums 0 dot length I plus plus. So what I'm going to do inside here, that's a very good what I'm gonna do inside here, I have to, now we're just iterating our first row. When you're iterating our row, if we find out a value is 0 in our first row, okay, so we have to check it first, matrix 0, and here we should have I. If we find out 0, what I'm gonna do, nullify column. So nullify column in our matrix at index I. Fine, that's fantastic. This is, we'll create this method, nullify column. So if we have here 0, after the pre-processing, when you have 0 here, we have to nullify this column. We have to set this entire column to 0. And that's it. Now for our first column, let's scan the first column here. So for int I equals to 0, I less than nums dot length I plus plus. Right inside here, I'm going to check if a matrix, and here what I'm going to do, I'm going to check out first value in our first column. So we will have here the index I, and we'll have here a 0 in our first column. If we have 0, we have to set the entire row. So nullify row matrix I, and nullify it means it will set the entire row to 0. Okay, we have to implement this function. We don't have something like a nullify row, nullify column. We have to set that function. We will do that, no problem. Now here, let's check if we have our value in our first column 0. There are a lot of code going on here actually, but it's not super difficult at all. Let's finish it first. So if row has a row 0, if we have row 0, then what I'm going to do, I'm going to nullify. I'm gonna nullify our first column. That's it. If row has 0, because actually if we has 0, okay, we have to nullify the first row, not the column. So nullify row. So matrix 0, the first row, right? The index of about 0. That's index of 0. Now if has col 0, then we have to nullify our column. So nullify our column matrix 0. This is for 0th columns. Okay, this is our algorithms. We have to implement the functions nullify. So let's implement nullify right below here. Okay, so let's implement nullify row and nullify column right here. So public void return type is void. It will return nothing. Let's call it first nullify row. Int it will take a matrix. So a matrix, and here we will have the index, the row index. So int row. Fine. Now inside here we have to set the row to 0, right? If we have Okay, so if we call this function nullify row, we have to set the row to 0. Okay, so we have to set the row to 0. So here for int I equals to 0, I less than, I have to get the length of our row. So matrix 0 dot length, this is the length of our row, right? Length I plus plus. And here I'm gonna set the entire row to 0. So matrix row, and here I equals to 0. This is what it is, right? Pretty straightforward. Now let's create the second method, that is called nullify column. So public void nullify call. Let's create this takes two parameter, matrix and column. The index of column. Now here let's run a loop for int I equals to 0, I less than matrix dot length I plus plus. Right inside here I'm gonna set matrix matrix I and our column. Okay, so we have to set for our column, so it will select the column. So here we have to just select the column and it will just change the value in the column. Alright, so this is basically the column, and it will set to 0. This is our code for these algorithms. So first what we did, first we have check our first row and first column. If that contains 0, we'll set the value true. Then we have iterate from index row index 1 and column index 1 all the way to the end. If we have 0, then we marked the first element in the row, first element in the row and first element in the column. Then we checked if we have anything 0 in our column, we'll set the row to 0, the column to 0, and if we have anything that is 0, then we set our row to 0, and so on. This is the algorithm. Now let's run this code and let's see if it works. If there is anything wrong, we'll fix that. Okay, I'm sorry, what's wrong? What's going on here? Okay, so we have here nums. What is, we should have here matrix. I'm so sorry for that. So let's just change this to matrix. This is just a silly mistake, I think. Just change this to nums, from nums to matrix. I'm sorry. It should be okay, matrix, and okay, here matrix. I think it's okay. Is there anything wrong? No, I think it's okay. Here we should have matrix. Now let's run this code. If there is a lot of code, it's hard to debug actually. So here it says okay, so line number 19. Oof, I'm sorry guys. Matrix 0. Let me check the code again before running it. Okay, everything looks fine. Matrix, we use here nums. That's a silly mistake. All right, matrix. Now let's run this again. Again, there is a problem. What's the problem is variable has row 0. Alright, has call 0. Variable has call 0. Has for, oh, I'm sorry. Has first row and has first column. Has first row and has first column. Okay, let's run it now. Accepted. Let's submit it. I'm sorry for the silly mistakes. Alright, it's accepted. There are a lot of code, it's hard to debug actually, but no problem. This is not a super difficult question. I think it's kind of medium level of problem. I hope you've understood this video explanations. If you have any questions, please ask your question in the reply forum. I'm here. I'm ready to help. this live is okay, I think. Just only 1 views. That's pretty bad for me, but no problem. I will it will increase by the time. I hope it will increase. All right, I hope you've understood these video explanations and how to solve this problem, coding interview problem, set matrix 0. This is a very famous coding interview questions. This question is oftenly asked by the big tech industry, so make sure you understood this problem better. You've understood this problem clearly. Now I'm going to stop this live right now. I'm going to live on the channel in the next day on sorting algorithms, I think. Thanks for watching, and till then, take care.